What if your blood test came back completely normal, but your body was quietly running out of one of the most essential vitamins it needs to survive? What if the test your doctor ordered, the one that's supposed to catch the problem, is actually designed to miss it? Today, we're uncovering the hidden science behind vitamin B12, what it does, why it disappears, and why millions of people are suffering without ever knowing why. Every single cell in your body depends on a tiny molecule called vitamin B12. Without it, your red blood cells can't form properly. Your nervous system begins to break down. Your DNA can't replicate. And yet, vitamin B12 deficiency is one of the most commonly missed conditions in modern medicine. Doctors order a blood test. The number comes back in the normal range. The patient goes home with no answers. But here's the problem, that blood test may not be telling the whole story. And for millions of people worldwide, the consequences of missing this diagnosis are serious and sometimes permanent. Vitamin B12 is a water-soluble nutrient also known as cobalamin. Your body cannot manufacture it on its own. You must get it from food, primarily animal products like meat, fish, eggs, and dairy, or from supplements. Once absorbed, B12 travels to your liver, where it can be stored for up to 5 years. That storage system is what makes deficiency so dangerous. You can be running low for months or even years before any symptoms appear. By the time you notice something is wrong, the damage may already be happening silently inside your nervous system. The story of vitamin B12 deficiency is not just a story about diet. It is a story about absorption. Even if you eat plenty of B12-rich foods, your body may still fail to use them. Here is why. Inside your stomach, a specialized protein called intrinsic factor binds to B12 molecules. Without intrinsic factor, your intestines cannot absorb B12 at all. When the immune system mistakenly attacks the stomach cells that produce intrinsic factor, a condition called pernicious anemia develops. This autoimmune condition is one of the leading hidden causes of B12 deficiency around the world. The global scale of this problem is staggering. Research shows that approximately 6% of adults under age 60 in the United States and United Kingdom have low B12 levels. But once a person crosses the age of 60, that number jumps sharply to nearly 20%. That means 1 in 5 older adults may be deficient. Worldwide, the numbers are even higher in populations that rely on plant-based diets, where B12 from natural food sources is almost entirely absent. This is a condition affecting hundreds of millions of people, and most of them have no idea. What makes B12 deficiency particularly dangerous is how it hides. In the early stages, there are no dramatic symptoms. You might feel slightly more tired than usual. Maybe a little forgetful. Perhaps some mild tingling in your fingers or toes. These are easy to dismiss. Doctors often do. Fatigue gets attributed to stress. Memory problems get blamed on aging. The tingling gets ignored. Meanwhile, the deficiency quietly progresses through 4 distinct biological stages, each one more damaging than the last, before the true crisis becomes impossible to ignore. This video is going to walk you through all of it. We will explain exactly what vitamin B12 does inside your body, why the standard blood test can miss a true deficiency, which groups of people are most at risk, what happens to your brain and nerves if the problem goes untreated, and what science says about the most effective ways to restore B12 to healthy levels. By the end, you will understand this vitamin in a completely different way, and you will know the right questions to ask your doctor. Let's begin with the blood test itself, because this is where the story gets complicated. When a doctor orders a standard vitamin B12 test, they are measuring the total amount of B12 circulating in your blood serum. The normal range used by most laboratories sits between 160 and 950 picograms per milliliter. If your number falls inside that range, most doctors will tell you that everything is fine. But here is the critical problem that researchers have known about for years: that number measures both active and inactive forms of B12, combined. Your body can only use the active form of vitamin B12. The inactive form, which is bound to proteins and biologically useless, is also counted in the standard test. This means your total B12 number can look perfectly normal while the amount your cells can actually use is dangerously low. Researchers describe this as a false normal result. Studies confirm that the standard serum B12 test has poor sensitivity for detecting true cellular deficiency. Millions of people receive normal results and walk away undiagnosed, while their nervous systems continue to deteriorate. There is a better diagnostic marker, one that reveals what is actually happening inside your cells. It is called methylmalonic acid, or MMA. Here is how it works. When your cells lack functional B12, a compound called methylmalonic acid begins to accumulate in your blood. MMA levels rise specifically because B12 is the enzyme cofactor needed to break it down. An elevated MMA level is considered one of the most reliable early indicators of true B12 deficiency at the cellular level, far more accurate than the basic serum B12 test alone. A second important marker is homocysteine. This amino acid builds up in the blood when B12 is too low to convert it into methionine, an essential molecule your body uses to build proteins and neurotransmitters. High homocysteine levels are not just a sign of B12 deficiency. They are also independently linked to increased risk of heart disease, stroke, and cognitive decline. This means that an undetected B12 deficiency is not just causing vitamin-related symptoms. It is quietly creating conditions that can damage your heart and brain over many years. Now consider the medications that silently rob your body of B12 without any warning on the label. Metformin, one of the most commonly prescribed drugs in the world for managing type 2 diabetes, is known to reduce B12 absorption over time. Proton pump inhibitors, used by millions to treat acid reflux, reduce stomach acid, the same acid your body needs to separate B12 from food proteins. Long-term use of these medications can gradually deplete your B12 stores while your routine blood tests continue to show numbers in the normal range. There is also the folate masking problem, one of the most dangerous hidden traps in B12 deficiency diagnosis. Folic acid, also known as vitamin B9, and vitamin B12 are closely connected in the body's metabolic pathways. When someone with B12 deficiency takes folic acid supplements, the folate can temporarily correct the blood cell abnormalities that normally signal a deficiency. The blood test looks better. But the neurological damage caused by low B12 continues underneath, silently progressing even while the numbers improve. This trap has caused serious, irreversible harm in real patients. To understand why B12 deficiency is so damaging, you need to understand what B12 actually does inside your body at the molecular level. Vitamin B12 acts as a coenzyme, a helper molecule that enables two critical biochemical reactions. The first reaction converts methylmalonyl-CoA into succinyl-CoA, a molecule involved in energy production inside your mitochondria. When B12 is absent, this conversion fails. Methylmalonic acid accumulates, and your cells begin to lose the ability to produce energy efficiently. This cellular energy failure affects every organ in your body, but hits your nervous system hardest. The second critical B12-dependent reaction involves the conversion of homocysteine into methionine. Methionine is not just a building block for proteins. It is also required to produce SAM, S-adenosylmethionine, which is the body's primary methyl donor. SAM is essential for synthesizing myelin, the protective sheath that insulates your nerve fibers. It is also required for making neurotransmitters including serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine. When B12 is insufficient, this entire chain of reactions slows down or stops, with profound consequences for your mood, memory, and mental health. The 4 stages of B12 deficiency reveal how gradually and silently this disease progresses. Stage 1, blood B12 levels begin to fall, but there are no symptoms whatsoever. Stage 2, B12 levels inside the cells drop, though standard blood tests may still show normal results. Stage 3, methylmalonic acid and homocysteine rise, and early neurological symptoms begin, tingling, memory problems, mood changes, difficulty concentrating. Stage 4, full clinical deficiency emerges, with megaloblastic anemia, abnormally large, malfunctioning red blood cells, and potentially severe neurological damage. The neurological damage of advanced B12 deficiency has a specific medical name: subacute combined degeneration of the spinal cord. In this condition, the myelin sheath, the insulating layer that protects nerve fibers, begins to break down. The posterior columns and lateral columns of the spinal cord are affected first. Signals traveling between the brain and body become distorted or completely blocked. Patients experience loss of balance, weakness in the limbs, difficulty walking, and severe sensory disturbances. In advanced cases, the damage to the spinal cord may be permanent even after B12 levels are restored. Beyond the spinal cord, B12 deficiency attacks the brain directly. Methionine deficiency impairs the production of neurotransmitters, the chemical messengers that regulate mood, attention, and cognition. Research has linked low B12 to depression, anxiety, psychosis, and even paranoia in severe cases. Brain imaging studies in deficient patients show measurable reductions in brain volume in regions associated with memory and learning. Elderly patients are particularly vulnerable. In populations screened for dementia, B12 deficiency is now routinely checked, because it is one of the rare causes of cognitive decline that is actually reversible with treatment. The blood cell effects are equally dramatic. Vitamin B12 is essential for DNA synthesis, specifically for producing the thymidine required to build new DNA strands during cell division. Without sufficient B12, rapidly dividing cells like those in bone marrow cannot replicate their DNA properly. The result is megaloblastic anemia, cells that grow large but never divide correctly. These oversized, abnormal red blood cells cannot carry oxygen efficiently. Patients feel deeply exhausted, breathless with minimal exertion, dizzy, and pale. Their bone marrow is working hard but producing cells that simply cannot function. Scientists and clinicians have spent decades studying exactly why the standard B12 test fails so many patients. One of the most important research advances has been the development of the holotranscobalamin test, sometimes called the active B12 test. Unlike the standard serum B12 test, this test measures only the fraction of B12 that is bound to its transport protein and actually available for cells to use. Studies show that active B12 levels decline earlier in deficiency than total B12 levels, making it a far more sensitive early warning tool that most patients never hear about from their doctor. Research published in peer-reviewed medical journals has also investigated the relationship between vitamin B12 and dementia, with striking results. One landmark study found that elderly individuals with the lowest B12 levels had significantly faster rates of brain volume loss compared to those with higher levels. Another clinical investigation found that supplementing deficient patients with high-dose B12 slowed brain shrinkage measurable on MRI scans. These findings have moved B12 from a footnote in dementia research to a key variable that neurologists are now taking seriously as a modifiable risk factor for cognitive decline. Researchers have also explored the striking connection between vitamin B12 and abnormally high test results. Most patients are only warned about deficiency, but elevated B12 levels carry their own diagnostic significance. Studies show that persistently high B12 in the blood, particularly without supplement use, can be an early marker for liver disease, myeloproliferative disorders, and certain forms of leukemia. In one research review, elevated B12 levels were found to precede a leukemia diagnosis by months. This means an unexpectedly high B12 result should never be dismissed as harmless, it warrants immediate clinical investigation. One of the most clinically important research discoveries concerns the relationship between B12 and the medication metformin. Large-scale studies, including data from thousands of patients followed over multiple years, confirm that long-term metformin use significantly reduces serum B12 levels in a dose-dependent manner. The mechanism involves metformin's interference with calcium-dependent membrane action in the terminal ileum, disrupting the absorption of the intrinsic factor and B12 complex. Most diabetic patients on metformin are never tested for B12 deficiency, leaving a large vulnerable population silently at risk for neurological complications. Research into pernicious anemia has led to important discoveries about the immune system's role in B12 deficiency. Scientists have identified two key autoantibodies involved in this condition. The first attacks parietal cells in the stomach lining, the cells responsible for producing intrinsic factor. The second directly blocks intrinsic factor from binding to B12. Testing for these antibodies is now a standard part of the diagnostic cascade when pernicious anemia is suspected. However, studies show that a significant percentage of confirmed pernicious anemia patients test negative for both antibodies, indicating the disease can be present even when the immune markers are absent. Scientists are also investigating the complex interaction between vitamin B12 and the gut microbiome. Certain bacteria in the human intestine can synthesize B12-like molecules, but in a location too low in the digestive tract for human absorption. Other studies have explored whether specific probiotic interventions can improve B12 bioavailability in the gut. Additionally, research is examining genetic variants, particularly in the FUT2 gene and TCN2 gene, that affect how efficiently individuals absorb and transport B12. These genetic differences may explain why some people develop deficiency on seemingly adequate diets while others never show symptoms. The good news is that vitamin B12 deficiency, when caught early enough, is one of the most treatable nutritional conditions in medicine. For people with mild to moderate deficiency caused by dietary inadequacy, high-dose oral supplementation is generally effective and well tolerated. The body has a secondary absorption pathway in the intestine that does not require intrinsic factor, absorbing roughly 1% of any oral dose by passive diffusion. This means that even individuals with pernicious anemia can benefit from very high oral doses, though the treatment takes longer to work than injections. For individuals with severe deficiency, absorption problems, or pernicious anemia, intramuscular B12 injections are the preferred treatment approach. Injections bypass the entire digestive absorption system, delivering B12 directly into the bloodstream and then to the liver for storage. Clinical studies confirm that injections raise B12 levels faster and more reliably than oral supplements in severe cases. Research published in 2019 concluded that oral supplementation alone is not equivalent to injections for patients with serious deficiency, particularly where neurological symptoms are already present. For these patients, prompt injection therapy can reverse symptoms before permanent damage occurs. The neurological recovery from B12 deficiency treatment is one of the most remarkable stories in clinical medicine. Patients who were experiencing severe psychiatric symptoms, including psychosis and paranoia, have recovered fully after B12 injections began. Patients with significant walking difficulties and peripheral neuropathy have regained function within weeks. However, recovery is directly tied to how early treatment begins. Research is clear: the longer the deficiency persists before treatment, the less complete the recovery. Some neurological damage, particularly to the spinal cord, may not fully reverse even after optimal B12 restoration. Early detection is everything. For high-risk populations, proactive screening is one of the most powerful tools available. Guidelines from multiple major health institutions now recommend regular B12 testing for all patients over the age of 60, all long-term metformin users, anyone following a strict vegetarian or vegan diet, patients with inflammatory bowel disease or celiac disease, individuals who have had gastric bypass surgery, and anyone with symptoms of peripheral neuropathy or unexplained cognitive decline. For these groups, waiting for symptoms to appear before testing is not acceptable medical practice. The deficiency may be actively damaging their bodies long before any symptom becomes visible. Looking toward the future, scientists are working on more precise diagnostic tools that combine multiple B12 biomarkers, active B12, methylmalonic acid, homocysteine, and holotranscobalamin, into a single integrated deficiency score. Researchers are also investigating sublingual and transdermal B12 delivery systems for patients who cannot receive injections. Genetic testing for absorption-related variants is becoming more accessible, potentially allowing physicians to identify individuals at inherited risk before deficiency ever develops. The trajectory of B12 research points toward a future where this condition is reliably detected in its earliest stages, before a single nerve fiber is damaged. Vitamin B12 is not just another supplement on a pharmacy shelf. It is a biological necessity, a molecule that your nervous system, your blood, your brain, and your DNA all depend on every single day. The science is clear, standard testing misses it, deficiency progresses silently, and the damage can become permanent. But it does not have to. If you are in a high-risk group, ask your doctor for a full B12 panel, including MMA and active B12. Do not wait for symptoms. Do not accept a single normal number as the final answer. Your nervous system is worth the extra question.